Russian military chiefs have ordered troops to carry out ill-conceived and unsupported counterattacks in the fiercely fought area of Bakhmut to urgently regain lost ground, experts report. The Institute for the Study of War says Russian soldiers claim their commanders deployed different types of personnel to front lines without providing enough working artillery shells, about to stem from efforts to speed up production of shells, skipping quality assurance measures. The troops said their unit had low morale after reports that Ukrainian forces destroyed most of a Russian regiment and almost an entire retreating assault group. One military blogger reportedly observed that hysterical counterattacks were depleting Russian resources and reserves. However, in a blow for Ukraine, Poland announced it would no longer be transferring any weapons to the country. Russia launched a massive air attack on the Ukrainian capital Kyiv and 5 other cities overnight, injuring at least 18 people and damaging infrastructure facilities, evoking memories of last year's air campaign that caused sweeping outages. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky was meeting U.S. politicians in Washington to shore up support for aid for his country as Republican skeptics questioned whether Congress should approve a new round. Russia's military command has ordered troops to carry out ill-conceived and unsupported counterattacks on Bakhmut's southern flank to urgently regain lost ground, according to Russian servicemen and military bloggers, the Institute for the Study of War reports. Elements of a mobilized unit published a video appeal in which the soldiers claim they abandoned their military equipment in the Klishchiivka area southwest of Bakhmut after receiving an order from the Russian military command to form an assault group and attack in the Bakhmut direction. The servicemen from Altai Kray's 1st Battalion of the 1442nd Regiment reportedly said the Russian military command began deploying different types of personnel to the front lines, including soldiers resting in the rear, without providing them with enough working artillery shells. The shells apparently did not explode when fired, thought to be a result of Russian efforts to speed up production of shells and skipping quality assurance measures to do so. The troops added that the unit was suffering from low morale after reports that Ukrainian forces destroyed most of a Russian regiment and almost an entire retreating assault group in the area. They claimed they had to rely on small arms, whereas the Ukrainians had artillery. Relatives of soldiers in the regiment have previously appealed to Vladimir Putin after troops were beaten for refusing to carry out an assault a week ago. Tensions reaching boiling point between the two neighbors after Volodymyr Zelensky said some countries were feigning solidarity by indirectly supporting Russia with a ban on grain imports. Volodymyr Zelensky has accused friends in Europe of playing into Russia's hands over food imports. During a speech at the UN General Assembly on Tuesday, September 19, the Ukrainian president said, "Some of our friends in Europe play out solidarity in a political theater, making a thriller from the grain. They may seem to play their own role, but in fact they are helping set the stage to a Moscow actor." It comes as Poland said it will stop transferring weapons to Ukraine after diplomatic clashes over grain and other food imports. Ukrainian forces inflicted significant losses on Russian manpower and equipment in the direction of the western Zaporizhia region yesterday, military chiefs say. The Ukrainian General Staff also reported that their forces continued offensive actions in the Bakhmut direction, the Institute for the Study of War reported. The UK Ministry of Defense said Ukrainian forces secured positions in Klishchiivka near Bakhmut and Andriivka nearby, and that Russian redeployments of airborne forces had weakened Moscow's defenses around Bakhmut. National Security Council spokesman John Kirby called the Ukrainian president our best messenger in persuading U.S. lawmakers to keep vital U.S. money and weapons coming. It's really important for members of Congress to be able to hear directly from the president about what he's facing in this counteroffensive, Kirby told reporters Wednesday, and how he's achieving his goals and what he needs to continue to achieve those goals. Biden has called on world leaders to stand strong with Ukraine, even as he faces domestic political divisions at home. A hard right flank of Republicans, led by former President Donald Trump, Biden's chief rival in the 2024 race for the White House, is increasingly opposed to sending more money overseas. As the White House worked to shore up support for Ukraine before Zelensky's visit, Secretary of State Antony Blinken and top intelligence officials briefed senior lawmakers behind closed doors Wednesday to argue the case. But some Senate Republicans walked out of the briefing no more convinced than before about the necessity of spending more on Ukraine. "It's not close to the end," Sen. Josh Hawley, a Missouri Republican, said. What we're basically told is, buckle up, and get out your checkbook. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky returned to Washington on Thursday for a whirlwind one-day visit, this time to face the Republicans now questioning the flow of American dollars that for 19 months has kept his troops in the fight against Russian forces. Zelensky arrived at the Capitol to talk privately with Republican and Democratic leaders of the House and Senate as the world is watching Western support for Kyiv. He will also meet with President Joe Biden at the White House and will speak with U.S. military leaders at the Pentagon. House Democratic leader Hakeem Jeffries escorted Zelensky into the Capitol, opening a crucial Washington stop for the Ukrainian president following his appearance before the UN General Assembly in New York. It is Zelensky's second visit to Washington since Russia invaded Ukraine in February 2022 and comes as Biden's request to Congress for an additional $24 billion for Ukraine's military and humanitarian needs is hanging in the balance. Russian forces shot down all Ukrainian missiles that attempted to attack the Saki air base in Crimea. Oleg Kryukov, an advisor to the Russian-installed head of the local administration Sergei Aksyonov, wrote on Telegram on Thursday. Ukraine's military said its forces had struck the Russian air base in Crimea overnight, confirming an attack that a Ukrainian intelligence source had earlier told Reuters was carried out by the SBU security service and Navy using drones and Neptune cruise missiles. The Russian bullet struck the sergeant just above the left ear. The leader of the Ukrainian platoon was down. Headquarters radioed a battlefield promotion to the private who had called him brother, a man known as Courier. Courier knew the platoon's orders were to move forward through the forest on the road to Bakhmut. He hesitated for 30 seconds near his mortally wounded commander. Maybe a minute. Then he decided there would be no turning back. Forward. He howled. He fired toward a trench just ahead until he was sure the Russians inside would never shoot again. Then the men stumbled through the charred spindles of trees toward the village of Androvka, the objective of the 3rd Assault Brigade since the start of Ukraine's counteroffensive this summer, about 6 miles 10 kilometers south of the city of Bakhmut. The sergeant, Gagarin, and other injured soldiers could only be evacuated after dark, because the Russians were also hunting down Ukrainians. Days later, as he prepared for Gagarin's funeral, Courier predicted his own future, his pale eyes unfocused. "This forest is taking our friends away, and this is the worst," he said. "And when I think about how far we still need to move forward, most likely someday, I will be the one to remain lying in the forest, and my friends will just go forward." This stretch of dead forest, couple dozen trees wide and a mile 2 kilometers long toward the equally dead village of Androvka, is one of countless like it on the road to Russian-controlled Bakhmut, which has now taken on huge symbolic significance in the Ukrainian counteroffensive. The Associated Press spent 2 weeks with the brigade for an intimate glimpse into the speed, direction, and cost of the counteroffensive, through scenes witnessed in the forest and at rest in helmet camera footage and drone video. A lot rides on their progress. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky is making his country's case to Washington and to the world this week for more money and more weapons, and must persuade his audience that the counteroffensive is working. The U.S. Congress is currently weighing President Joe Biden's request to provide as much as $24 billion more in military and humanitarian aid.